It's time for Eye on Africa with me, Jean-Emile Jamin, taking a look at all your latest news from across the continent. Here are your headlines. The United States deports 5 violent criminals from countries like Vietnam, Yemen and Cuba to Eswatini under a Trump-era scheme targeting nations that refuse to take them back. The prisoners have been convicted of crimes including murder and child rape. Eswatini says they're in transit and denies any security risk. Then a brutal RSF attack on Sudan's Sheikh al-Nom village has left 200 dead and homes burned with families inside. Nearly 300 were killed across North Kordofan as paramilitaries push to seize key territories before Sudan's rainy season halts their advance. Mass burials are now taking place as families come to terms with the loss. And at the G20 in Durban, African leaders push for cross-border trade reforms, but Donald Trump's tariff threats dominate. The US Treasury Secretary skips again, while South Africa's central bank defends building a payment system to boost intra-African trade, not bypass the dollar. As 100,000 South African jobs are under threat, we get the latest from the country's central bank chief. Welcome to the show. A plane carrying convicted rapists and child molesters deported from the United States has landed in Eswatini, part of a Donald Trump-era crackdown on undocumented criminals. But instead of being returned to their home countries, they're now being rerouted to African nations. Eswatini is the latest to receive them as the US expands a quiet and controversial strategy across the continent. Tom Canetti has more from the region.
The Department of Homeland Security has described these violent criminals as so uniquely barbaric that their home countries won't take them back. But I've just spoken to a spokesperson for the Eswatini government who has said that they are actually in transit in Eswatini and that they will end up eventually in their countries of origin. So some conflicting information between the two governments there. What we do know is that they come from Yemen, Vietnam, Jamaica, Cuba, and Laos, and that they are convicted of crimes that include murder and rape. On the 4th of July, the US administration deported 8 criminal migrants to South Sudan after a Supreme Court ruling that allowed the Trump administration to deport criminal migrants to countries other than their own, known as the third country. It seems that Trump wants to do this more in Africa. He held a summit last week at the White House with 5 West African leaders where he discussed this. Nigeria's foreign minister, Nigeria was not at that meeting, but the foreign minister still came out and said publicly that the country will not accept deported criminal migrants. However, Rwanda have said that they are entertaining such a deal. The question remains, though, what are these African countries getting in return for receiving these criminal migrants being deported into their country?
Moving on, a massacre in Sudan's North Kordofan. 200 people have been buried in a single day after a brutal attack by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary. Survivors say homes were shelled and families burned alive as the RSF stormed the village of Sheikh al-Nom. Nearly 300 are feared dead across nearby villages. The paramilitary group is pushing to control key fuel routes before Sudan's rainy season halts their advance. Nabab Nohaddin has this report for France 24.
Actually, it's one of the battles, fierce clashes and battles in North Kordofan since the RSF is trying to penetrate towards Al Ubaid city, which one of the main cities in Western Sudan and in North Kordofan particularly. It's a big commercial city and it's one of the strongholds of for the military and this massacre is not the first one, but it was condemned by United Nations and international community because in only 3 days, the RSF committed the massacre and killed more than 300 civilians, including 64 children. The situation is beyond catastrophic in North Kordofan. This area has been very calm for a long time, and it's one of the commercial hubs for North Kordofan, and also it feeds Sudan with main crops including gum arabic, peanut, and many cash crops. So this massacre, of course, will right now the Sudanese military recontrolled the area of Msimema, which is one of the main battlefield there. But this massacre will, of course, shed impacts on the livelihood of people, and it will result in a new displacement crisis, and it will also have economic impacts because, as I told you, North Kordofan is one of the agricultural hubs, the main ones for Sudan and for the Sudanese economy. So, of course, it will result in a very bad complication. This is the plan for the RSF since March. They are trying to control main cities in North Kordofan, including Al-Nuhud, Al-Khway, as we saw many massacres before when the RSF tried to control West Kordofan, and now they are penetrating towards North Kordofan. This is one of the main roads links Kordofan to Darfur. And as I told you, Kordofan is a very rich region, rich with crops, rich with cash crops, and also politically, it's a stronghold for the army. So controlling this area is very crucial for the RSF. Smuggling of fuel, of course, and recruitment of fighters and sending them to Darfur this road is very important for the RSF. But they lost grounds when the Sudanese military recontrolled the Nuhud in West Kordofan. So right now their strategy basically is to control Al-Ubaid. All of these massacres that we saw in the weekend, it's around Al-Ubaid city, which is the main city in North Kordofan. If they control Al-Ubaid, of course, this will be a catastrophic situation for hundreds of thousands of people, for the commerce, for the economy, because Al-Ubaid is one of the main hubs for the Sudanese merchants and for the economy. So right now, the target is Al-Ubaid. All of the massacres is just around the city of Al-Ubaid to try to control it.
In Durban, South Africa, tensions are mounting as G20 finance ministers prepare to meet without US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who skipped the gathering for a second time. South Africa, holding the G20 presidency for the first time, is pushing an African agenda focusing on climate change, cheaper capital, and a cross-border payment system to boost intra-African trade. But looming large over discussions are Donald Trump's tariff threats, including a 10% baseline on all US imports and possible penalties for BRICS nations promoting alternatives to the dollar. African leaders insist the payment plan is about trade, not defiance. But nonetheless, the tariffs could hit key sectors of several economies, including South Africa's agriculture and automotive industries, risking some 100,000 jobs, says their central bank chief, Lesetja Kanyoko.
As African central banks, we have decided that we are going to enable the movement of payments across borders. And we do that by building our own systems in the same way that Europeans do the same, in the same way that Asians do the same, in the same way that the Latin Americans do the same. We are doing it not to bypass anybody. We are doing it because it will facilitate trade on our continent.
That's Lesetja Kanyako, South Africa's central bank chief. And finally, it's creating quite a buzz in Kenya, a sting operation of a different kind. Some chronic pain patients are turning to bee sting therapy, letting the insect do the needling. But while some say it's unbelievable and effective, doctors warn it could be high risk and even deadly for allergic patients. Laurent Beshtecker swarms in with this story.
Since suffering from a stroke over 2 years ago, Gladys Nguna has struggled with weakness in the left side of her body. The 60-year-old recently began to visit this wellness center in central Kenya and says her condition started to improve after taking part in bee sting therapy sessions, an experimental treatment that uses bee venom to offset pain.
Right now I can feel my leg. When I stand up, I can feel it regaining some strength. I can even feel pain from the sting, which means that my nerves are active.
The method, which is mostly used to treat pain-related conditions, remains completely unregulated in Kenya and largely falls outside of the formal healthcare sector. Bee products such as honey, wax, or pollen have long been used in traditional medicine, yet scientists only recently began to study the insect's venom for its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. They warn the practice remains unsafe and potentially fatal for some patients.
A bee sting can have life-threatening impact on you. So I will advise all the people who would like to go through this therapy to seek medical advice and know their status. How would they react to a bee sting?
While the risks are well known, there is so far no scientific evidence proving the benefits of bee venom on humans, and doctors warn getting stung could be doing more harm than good.
Listen to the health professionals. That is the message there. Well, that's all the news from across Africa, from around Africa. You've seen Eye on Africa with me, Jean-Emile Jameen. There's more news coming up on France 24.